All right, it is Thursday, August 3rd, 2023. And folks, you are listening to the MMA Eco live podcast. I am your host, as usual, Chris Presnell, coming at you live from beautiful Portland, Oregon, USA, where things are finally heating up for the summer, getting into the upper 90s or maybe just the mid 90s for today. But either way, beautiful day outside, and I'm ready to talk about some Asian MMA with you all. Got some good fights going on this weekend and a lot to cover. So in case you're new to the podcast, what I'm going to do is go over the Asian MMA schedule for the weekend, anything else that's kind of floating around out there, and then we'll get to your questions. So you can leave any questions that you have for me in the comments section below, and I will get to those. If I deem that the questions are insensitive, inflammatory in any kind of way, I'll probably just skip over them. So please keep it kind, keep it civil, and let's get started. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and like this video. Really appreciate that. And guys, look at this. Look at this new piece of equipment here. This is a Yeti Blue microphone, upgraded from the clip-on microphones, although sometimes I still use those in my videos. Finally got the equipment I needed, had to do some finagling on Amazon to finally get some adapters, but we are all set to go. Hopefully this works, and if you can't hear me, I guess let me know in the comments, and hopefully I'll see that. But I tested it, and it should be working, I believe. So glad to finally get an upgrade from the clip-on to a nicer microphone. This microphone, by the way, courtesy of Drake Riggs, lives in the area and was able to he's selling some podcasting equipment that had barely been used. So really appreciate that. Gave me a good price on the microphone. So shout out to Drake Riggs. Hopefully should have be live on the air with him this weekend at some point. I'll let you guys know about that. But yeah, let's get into some Asian MMA. First off, want to cover some breaking news. Y'all, I broke a fight. What was that? 2 days ago, I broke the fight for Road to UFC, the non-tournament bouts at flyweight. Naim Jargal Tumindum Barrel is going to fight Peter Daniso in a non-tournament showcase fight on August 26th in Singapore. Both those guys won their flyweight fights at the opening round of Road UFC. So it's kind of like a mini tournament within a tournament. And I would think the winner will probably get signed by the UFC. It's a tremendous fight. Love the prospects of both of these guys, two really young guys in their early 20s, and really bright futures for both. Peter Daniso would be the first male Thai athlete in the UFC if he should win and be signed by the promotion. But the other fight that I want to break here live on the air is at UAE Warriors on the same day in Abu Dhabi, August 26, UAE Warriors 24. That is the Tibetan Knight, Qiulun versus Rashid Vagabov of Russia. So that fight will take place. It'll be both guys' UAE Warriors debut. Qiulun has won 3 fights regionally within China since his last Road to UFC appearance. He lost close fights in both Road to UFC and in Contender Series, and just shy of getting into the UFC through those avenues. But he's gone back to the regional scene, fought 3 guys that I would say are a little below his level, but kind of just to get his confidence back. 2 of those first round finishes. And now on a 3-fight win streak, he's going to move up to UAE Warriors and fight this Russian guy, Rashid Vagabov. Vagabov kind of outside of the limelight a little bit, but he is 9-2, has fought mostly for Eagle FC. Don't really know much about him, but glad to see that Qiulun is getting out of the country to fight and also fighting a tougher opponent than he's fought the last couple fights. Now we can see what he's made of once again, if he's made any major improvements. And I don't know if this would be like you're in the UFC if you win this, but personally, I would think if he wins this, maybe one more at kind of the UAE Warriors level, and then maybe the UFC will give him a shot. Potentially, if he looks really good against Vagabov, I could see them slotting him in if they go to Shanghai at the end of the year. which still really hopeful for that. So, Qiulun has been around for a long guy. The UFC knows all about his skills. He's been with the PI out there. So he's still really young too. So he has a lot of time. Really just needed a win streak to get back into the spotlight. So excited for that fight. You'll see that also Bargung Jella Issa is also fighting on that same UAE Warriors card. He's going to be fighting a guy named Javier Alioui, which I can't remember which country. I believe maybe he's a French-Moroccan guy, former UAE Warriors champion. But also really glad to see that Bargung is getting a high-profile fight immediately after Road to UFC. He had a really close fight with Asuya Kamikubo in Road to UFC and really showed what he was made of there. So glad to see he's getting another opportunity as well. But yeah, so there's your breaking news: Qiulun versus Rashid Vagabov. You heard it here first. But either way, let's get into the fights this weekend. So of course we've got one Friday Fights 27 going down tomorrow morning from Bangkok. Nothing really on the MMA side that I'm going to touch on, but tomorrow evening or perhaps Saturday morning in Bangkok, we've got one Fight Night 13 going down in Bangkok. This is headlined by a featherweight kickboxing fight between Chingiz Alazov and Murat Grigorian. I think there's some great non-MMA fights on this card, but for my sake, I'm just going to be touching on the MMA stuff. Check out some of your other outlets like SEMP and Beyond Kickboxing for some really good coverage on the other stuff. But let me go ahead and share my screen and we can take a look at this card. There's only 3 MMA fights on this card, which for me is a little bit disappointing considering there's a lot of Muay Thai going on in one championship with the Friday Fights cards. So for me, I really look forward to these Fight Night cards, hoping that there's more MMA fights, but only 3 MMA fights on this whole card. But they're good fights. Really, really looking forward to each and every one of them. So here we go. Here is the one Fight Night 13 card. Interesting that they have Tawan Chai booked when they also have him booked for the main event of one Fight Night 15. Always kind of strange to me when they double book fighters in the same promotion and kind of assuming that they're going to be healthy. So let's start from the bottom. You got Jonlo Mark Sangiao, Philippines, fighting Enk Orgol Batarku. So interesting, some storylines going into here. First of all, Jonlo Mark Sangiao, one of the few high-profile Filipino fighters to stay with Team Lakay. He is 6-0, just 21 years old, and he's fighting in one's bantamweight division, which is 145 pounds. And so far, he's looked good with lots of submission wins under his belt. He's going to be taking a step up against another good wrestler, kind of sambo guy in Enk Orgol. So looking forward to that fight. Kind of too early for me to say what kind of prospect Jonlo Mark Sangiao is going to be going forward. But we're building him. We're developing him slowly. Let's see what he can do against another good grappler. It's a cool fight. A very interesting fight that was announced a long time ago. This Marcus Buchecha fight versus Rug Omar Kane should be a straight chaos fight. Probably. There's always the possibility that these heavyweight fights just end up being a snooze fest. Is both guys are really, really dangerous in their own corner. So you could not to be like a downer here, but sometimes these fights turn out where each guy is like afraid to engage the other because they're so dangerous in their own corner. So Rug is going to be he's going to be looking to just like smash this guy. Buchecha looking for the submission. Not to say that a miracle couldn't happen in another kind of outcome, but most likely that's how this fight's going to unfold. But yeah, how's it going to go? I'm not totally sure. I would probably think Buchecha is going to get the submission here. But hopefully this fight is chaos and everything that we want it to be. Potentially, if Buchecha wins, you could definitely see him making a case for the next heavyweight title shot. He's definitely up there. Not that the heavyweight division in one championships MMA is that deep, but Buchecha is definitely a guy that they would love to get into a title fight. He's got a massive, massive following. So yeah, looking forward to that. And potentially we could see him against Anatoly Malikin in the near future, but I don't know. Personally, I'd like to see him have a few more than 5 fights under his belt before he takes on a killer like Malikin. But and then the third MMA fight we've got is John Lineker versus Kim Jae-woong. Kind of a strange fight, as John Lineker was the champ and Kim Jae-woong has lost 3 of his last 4. So a little bit of a strange fight, although not totally strange, but unfortunate. Thing that happened was that John Lineker did miss weight. Surprise, surprise. So this is a catch weight fight. Didn't see how much weight he missed by, but did see that from South China Morning Post. So that's unfortunate. But most likely, I would think Lineker probably going to get back in the win column with a knockout here. Kim Jae-woong, exciting fighter, lots of knockouts himself. So yeah, looking forward to that. Should be action, but kind of strange matchmaking if you ask me. But there you go. And then you've got Taiwan Chai on the card. You've got Mikey Musumeci versus Jared Brooks, kind of a grappling super fight within one championship. And then Chingiz Alavasov in the main event. Kind of you got a Europe versus Europe, and then USA versus USA kind of action going on there. All right. So there is one Fight Night 13 going down from Bangkok that airs on Amazon Prime. Let's also get into the next event. There's only 3 events that I could really find going on this weekend. A couple smaller Japanese MMA events that I saw, but these are the main ones I wanted to cover. JCK, interesting kind of event they've got going on here. They're calling it Fight Night 66, which I think makes a lot of sense to switch up their naming convention. Before, it was way too confusing. Everything was like JCK Fight Night 22 to 23, number 13, or 16 to 8, part 3, something like that. Just too long of a name. They're shortening it down now just to be like JCK Fight Night and number. So I think that's smart. And I also like the direction they're heading. I don't know totally how they're going to change up their structure, but honestly, the structure that they've used the last couple years, where it's like sort of 2 different tournaments feeding into one, all of that structure was way too complicated. So complicated that at the beginning of the season, they had to have an exec come on and basically give this long PowerPoint presentation explaining the structure. I think they need to simple it down, either just have one tournament, or in my opinion, just have even simpler than that would be great, because there's just too many fighters in this massive tournament. It moves too quickly, people get injured, and it gets, again, too complicated. And then you have, with a field so big where you're starting off with like 32 fighters per weight class, often you find a lot of mismatches or a lot of fights, like repeat fights happening. So I think it's time to switch things up and not leave it to the tournament brackets to decide things. Having a lot of fighters that are 1-0 fighting fighters like Shang Zhifa, who is one of the best fighters in China right now. So I'm happy to see the tournament structure go if they are moving away from that. So this weekend, you've got one Fight Night 66, and it's a pretty basic event. Kind of just a lot of mid-level fights, some good prospects that I'll highlight here in a second. But an interesting thing that they have on the card is they have a 1-night 4-man tournament going on with 4 flyweights. And the winner of that tournament will basically get entrance into the JCK season. So I like that. It's a way to have a little bit more barrier of entry for some of the less experienced fighters to kind of prove themselves that they belong with some of the more experienced fighters. So I'd like that. The more we can have fighters kind of at the same experience level fighting each other, the better. At least 1 or 2 rungs on the ladder away, not like 10 rungs on the ladder. So really like that. Wasn't planning on pulling up this card, but just so I can kind of refresh my own memory, let me pull it up real quick. I added these fights to Tapology earlier this week. Really just a couple prospects I'm not going to spend too long on here, since I know it's not a super popular event, but let me just highlight a few guys real quick. All right, so here is JCK Fight Night 66. In the main event, you've got a guy that I know pretty well and that I think could be a good prospect. He's a Kazakh Chinese guy, Aiding Tuota, oh gosh, Tuoha Taar. Be almost easier just to know the Kazakh name for that, right? But so he is 6-2. He's fought for the one championship, not one hero series, but they're another one of their reality shows that they had. He recently beat another Kazakh Chinese guy named Yardana, and he submitted him. So I think that was a really good win for him, and I think he could have a lot of upside. He's fighting Shi Xiaodong, and then the flyweight bracket you can see down here. Even here's kind of a strange selection. You've got this guy Chumu Argu, who goes by Adi, fighting Myktybek Umarov of Tajikistan. Then you've got Shangguang Wei fighting Buhuo Gubu. I believe Buhuo Gubu trains at the UFC PI, and he also is trains out of E Fight with like Buhuo Yogan. He's a E ethnic minority, so I think he'll probably cruise in this tournament and get the contract. But yeah, there you have it. And then opening things up, you've got a women's kind of 120-pound fight between Li Yixuan versus Xu Wanying. Let's see. Yeah, got another women's strawweight or flyweight on our radar down here. So interesting fight card. Not sure if it's on UFC Fight Pass or not. I'll let you guys know. But that's JCK Fight Night. And then the only other event that I'm going to cover before I get to your questions is UFC Nashville. The only Asian fighter on this card is Asu Almabaev, who fights out of Kazakhstan, and he is making his UFC debut. I actually am just now exporting the video. I've got a whole breakdown for you guys on Asu Almabaev's skills, his strengths, his weaknesses. I'm going to upload to YouTube in the next couple hours. I was going to have this video out Tuesday or Wednesday, but had some things come up over the weekend that didn't really allow me to start on the video until Tuesday, and then had some technical difficulties with filming yesterday. So I had to refilm the whole thing today. Been working on that, and it is uploading to YouTube as we speak. So hopefully in the next like hour or two, that will be online for your enjoyment. I'm not going to go ahead and just like quote the whole video, but I think Asu Almabaev will do pretty well in the UFC. I think he'll probably win either a decision or a late submission against Ode Osborne. Osborne is a pretty good test, let's be honest. I think he's a guy that is frequently underrated. He's got a really high finishing rate and some good, he's got some triangle choke submissions. He's got a good jab. So I could see him giving Almabaev some problems on the feet with his jab. But overall, I think Almabaev's gonna take him to the ground, potentially submit him. If anything, just control him. He's got a really, really airtight wrestling game. So I'll go over all of that in the video. But overall, really excited to see Almabaev in the UFC. Of course, we had Azat Maksum debut in the UFC. We're going to have Sora Rakhmonova on Contender Series later this year. So a lot of good Kazakh talent going into the UFC right now. And yeah, that's UFC Nashville, headlined by Rob Font and Corey Sandhagen. All right. Yeah, hit me with any other questions that you have. You can do that all throughout the show. But let's get into your questions. See, we've got some in there right now. Starting off with Ryu. Drake's our man. Yeah, love that guy. That's cool. He said he sold you a microphone. Will you be doing SCMP Fight Companion for that? Most likely, yes. That's what I'm hoping to be doing. That's what Drake and I talked about when we hung out the other day. But yeah, hoping to be on that. I haven't been on that for a while. I think just kind of hopped off that because I was getting asked to do some results for other events on Friday nights, and it's always kind of like honestly, those fight companions are sometimes difficult just because of a lot of the different martial arts styles. And, they've got kickboxing, Muay Thai, and grappling, which I do enjoy watching, but I'm not as familiar with those fighters. So sometimes it's a little bit hard for me to really offer meaningful commentary on what's going on. But I think it also depends on who you're with and also just what you can notice in real time. So I am looking forward to that. I'm trying to find other ways just to push myself to grow and expand my knowledge base. So yeah, I'll be on the Fight Companion. Looking forward to being on there with Drake. Not sure who else is going to be there, but yeah, we will. And speaking of Drake, I don't agree that Seika Izawa is the best in the world, even though she's a fun grappler. Submitting a scrub who doesn't know what she's doing and not impressive. Do you agree? Yeah, I kind of touched on this a little bit last week. I think I wouldn't call Claire Lopez a scrub, but I definitely wouldn't say that she's like elite UFC level competition. For me, Seika Izawa has hit her ceiling where she's at. I don't really I think that she is good, but I see her kind of at this middle level of like, unless she moves out of Ryzen, unless Ryzen signs some really high level talent to fight her, I think she's just kind of in a holding pattern, honestly. Like she needs to find ways to challenge herself. She hasn't really been fighting anyone that's been giving her a challenge the last couple fights. And fighting in Ryzen, fighting in Japan, she's kind of like, she's outgrown where she's at. I think that if she were to move to a higher level of competition, that her skills would follow her to that higher level. But for now, yeah, I don't know what her plan is. And talking with Drake, Seika Izawa mentioned that she maybe only plans to fight until age 30. So the clock is ticking on that. And if she wants to make a move to try and be, quote, the best in the world or prove herself on that level, the time is now to do that. Ryzen is most likely offering her a lot of money to stay. They really feature her heavily, and I think really like having her around. So yeah, it's tough. I don't know what she's going to do. She may just be happy to pick up big paychecks with Ryzen, and if you can make big paychecks easily, fighting people that you're a lot better than. I mean, for us as the fans, we want people for the best to fight the best, but think of it from a fighter's perspective, making the most money the easiest way possible. It's hard to argue with that, honestly. So I don't know what Seika Izawa is being paid. I don't know what her plans, her goals are. So that's just kind of how I feel about it. I think that she's good, but I think she's outgrown where she's at right now. Hello. I have a different style of question for you this week. What are your top 5 gyms in Asia that have produced the best MMA talent so far or in the past? Yeah, great question, Kendris. Really good to think about. Definitely Tiger Muay Thai. I would say I would put Evolve MMA in Singapore in there. I would put Bong Tao in there. It's like Bong Tao has not been around for a long time, and a lot of the fighters that they represent haven't been with them for a long time either. So it's harder to say like this is a homegrown fighter that they've produced. But I'm going to go ahead and include them in there just because of the elite level of their coaching staff and a lot of the fighters that they currently have under their banner. Going to put them on there with a little bit of an asterisk, not to say that they're not a good gym, but they just haven't been around for long enough. Soma Fight Club in Bali is a rapidly growing, really good gym. A lot of really good Indian fighters coming out of that gym. Anshul Jubli, one of them, Pujo Tomar. That's a great gym. Where else? Let's see. Bali MMA is pretty good. Trying to think of all of Asia right now. Dar team in Almaty, Kazakhstan has produced a lot of UFC level Kazakh fighters. They're pretty good. So yeah, those are the ones I would say. Dar team, Tiger Muay Thai, Bong Tao, Soma, and Evolve MMA would be my top 5. What's your opinion on Beyond Kickboxing? I feel like they do a good job covering Muay Thai and kickboxing. Yeah, I do. I follow Tim Wheaton on Twitter, and so sometimes I see what pops up on my timeline. Otherwise, I don't really don't really consume their content a whole lot. So I can't really answer that question since I don't super follow kickboxing and Muay Thai that much, but it seems like a lot of people share their content and give them positive feedback. So Tim Wheaton, I like that guy a lot. I think he has really good analysis. So yeah, beyond kickboxing, it seems like a good site to follow. No snarky pun today. Too bad, missing that. But do you think that one's best product is 4-ounce Muay Thai? Yeah, I would say so. Their MMA fights have always been mediocre, but putting high-level ties in 4-ounce gloves brings excitement. Why do they market themselves as an MMA promotion when the best product they have is 4-ounce Thai boxing? I mean, yeah, let's see where One Championship is at in 2 years. Are they still going to try to make a claim to be a high-level MMA promotion? I don't know, because you got to think about like Angela Lee. Is she still going to be around? We don't know. She's supposed to make some announcements about that in September, so we'll wait and see on that. But that was one of their best and biggest MMA stars. Xiong Jingnan, watched an interview with her and Drake Riggs yesterday, and it sounds like she's going to stay with One Championship, but she is like, what, 35, 36, probably just a couple years left with her. Anatoly Malikin, definitely their best MMA fighter right now. Star potential. He's like probably the best thing they have going with MMA. They've also got like Buchecha on their roster. They've got some other good fighters, but I don't see One Championship growing their MMA roster very much. So I don't know what's going to happen with One Championship in MMA. It definitely seems to be shrinking. It's like, where are their MMA fights happening? There's 2 on those Friday fights cards every week, which get like zero hype, zero coverage. And then their monthly Fight Night shows. I mean, I just mentioned it earlier. There's only 3 MMA fights on there. So they've never been promoting as few MMA fights as they are right now. That's a little bit concerning to me, because if you're not promoting any fights, your divisions aren't healthy. You're not going to be able to attract high-level competition. It's just going to die out. So definitely their 4-ounce Muay Thai is their best product. They could build a whole promotion off of just that. Honestly, like, I don't know what they're going to do. Adding grappling was a strange decision to me, but I could definitely see One Championship. Like, if I was running One Championship, I'm not saying like, maybe they probably won't do this, but if I was running One Championship, I would say, let's put all of our assets and let's put all of our money towards developing 4-ounce Muay Thai and kickboxing. Let's really just all the money that we're sending to MMA fighters and grapplers, we're not able to compete anymore with like UFC, PFL, Bellator. So why not just make that our thing? Let's make that what we're known for. Maybe they're going that direction because they're promoting a lot less MMA fights nowadays, but yeah, people seem to love it. They're exciting fights. They have a lot of the world's best fighters, and it seems to just be getting better in that regard. If that's going to translate to the Western, like the broader combat sports audience, yet to be seen, but they're definitely trying. Tomorrow night's main event in One Championship has 2 European guys fighting each other. So Europe is definitely a really big market. Honestly, I feel like One Championship has a better shot being successful in Europe than they do in the US, partially just because like the striking martial arts haven't really caught on the wider audience in the US yet. And that's most of what their product is now. And so Europe, it seems to be a lot more popular there. So I would say for One Championship, do that. Even going back to a lot of places in Asia where striking martial arts are really popular, like Southeast Asia and China and in Japan too, with the rise of Japanese kickboxing. Like, go back to all of those places and just don't try and like build a market somewhere. Just go where the market's already at. that's just me. Maybe One Championship has something up their sleeve to try and revive their MMA brand, but they have they have some good things going for them. And honestly, I think a lot of their MMA fights are pretty exciting. Whether that's because of a mismatch or not is up to debate. But yeah, because it's like interesting. I've heard folks from One Championship really tout their like high finishing rate with MMA fights. But for me, I kind of have to wonder like what's really behind that. I'm not sure that's really just like our fighters just want to finish fights more. I think you got to look at the matchmaking a little bit with that too. Sometimes the fights are a little bit mismatched. So that's my opinion on it. I don't want to come off as like an anti-One Championship person. I just think business wise, if I was running it, I would not try to do everything at a subpar level, but I would try to do a few things and be the absolute best. One Championship has no competition with 4-ounce Muay Thai. They can totally dominate the business, whereas MMA is a massive uphill battle, and it seems like they're sliding backwards a little bit. So, yeah, good question. That's kind of my thoughts on that. Let's see. Just saw Whaley's jiu-jitsu coach, Josh Hinger, post that Whaley was doing the Airdyne bike in the sauna for conditioning. Is that something you would be interested in doing? Like personally? I think I need to do some just like basic jogging first, but before I try to be John Whaley. But thanks. Maybe someday soon. Also saw in a Billy interview that her new training methods and film analysis team the last 3 years have helped her to understand that this is a matchup specific sport and not who is best. That's really smart. Yeah. She's figured out her coaching staff, and I would not be surprised if she doesn't lose in a while because of that. Rio saying, again, I want to put this out there. I think Seika Izawa's best 2 wins was with her 2 fights against Hamasaki. Yeah, that is true. Hamasaki is a high-level win for sure. But her competition level after that has gone way down, and she looked bad against Park. Yeah, it was a split decision. So, yeah, I just if she was consistently challenging herself against like other young top-level fighters, then I think that her skill level would rise. The Hamasaki wins are huge. Hamasaki was probably the best woman in Japan for a while, and then Izawa beat her. So not saying Izawa isn't good, but she just needs to, I think, move into a bigger pond. Ariel Hawani likes to ask leading questions like, do you want to fight Valentina Shevchenko to Weili or to Yuri? It's good that you're taking the high road and not trash talking. Do you feel that? Hawani likes to stir the pot or instigate. Yeah, this was a big thing this week in MMA media. Saw a video from James Lynch the other day where I felt like he like really accurately like talked about the positive and negative out of that. And honestly, I feel like I'm just going to be repeating James Lynch. So like, just go watch his video. He actually just like broke down the whole situation. But I don't mind someone in the MMA media. I honestly don't mind them asking a question like that. I just thought that the narrative that Ariel Hawani was presenting was the wrong narrative, if that makes sense. I don't mind him asking, do you want to fight Valentina Shevchenko? It's like, if you're asking a leading question like that, it's like, it's a question that isn't like he'll ask questions that don't necessarily have a logical flow to them. But I think sometimes the skill of that is that fighters feel a certain way, but they don't get to express some of those feelings unless they're asked that specific question. So by Ariel asking Zhang Weili, like, do you want to fight Valentina Shevchenko, kind of out of left field, but what if that's something Weili has been wanting for a while, and then all of a sudden that becomes a thing? All the time we see fights happen because someone in the MMA media basically like stirs the pot or suggests the idea. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. And I don't necessarily have listened to that interview with Yuri Prochazka, and James Lynch really appropriately pointed out, like, Yuri's English is good, but there might have been some issues with the way that he was able to convey his opinions that may not have been translated accurately. So James Lynch was suggesting this would probably be a good interview to use a translator instead of Yuri speaking in English, which I think was a bold but probably accurate suggestion. I don't mind MMA media members presenting a narrative to an athlete and asking them to comment on that narrative. But I just think that the narrative that Ariel Helwani was presenting, like, it was a pretty weak, there's a weak argument for that narrative. James Lynch goes into sort of like why that was a weak narrative. He looks at, he goes into the drama, looks at the tweets, all that stuff. But I just think it wasn't a very strong take by Ariel to say, like, you're taking the high road by not trashing Jamal Hill, when Jamal had honestly pretty much taken the high road too as well. So it was just kind of a weird thing that stirred up some unnecessary drama, and fighters honestly can be pretty sensitive sometimes. It's hard to let things just roll off their back. So Jamal Hill made this whole YouTube video in response to it. It just seemed a little bit unnecessary to me. Just my opinions on that. But what were your thoughts on the Kyoji Horiguchi eye poke? Love Kyoji, and I think he's one of the best 25 pounds in the world. So it was sad to not see him style on some guy. Yeah, I was extremely disappointed in that fight. Commented last week kind of about the rationale behind Bellator introducing a flyweight division right now. But it was a big shame. Like, that was definitely the fight I was looking forward to most, and we didn't get to see it at all between Takahashi and Horiguchi. So I haven't heard any updates on Takahashi if he has any injuries from that fight, but would love to see it booked ASAP. Although you got to think with, like, the timing and the contracts, maybe this might be a hard fight to rebook. I had heard from Drake Riggs that Rizin was hoping to go to Hawaii at some point in the future. So maybe they would rebook it for that, or Bellator can work it out to just book it on a show in the future, maybe for Bellator 300. Yeah. I think that's a great list that you made. I was curious, so I can look up some emerging talent. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've probably heard of, like, of most of those, the Tiger Muay Thais and Bong Taos. But yeah, Soma Fight Club is an emerging club. A lot of really good coaching there, a lot of emerging talent. So if you're wanting to find up and coming talent, definitely check those guys out. Follow them on Instagram. And I would also throw Bali MMA in there as well. Both of those gyms have created their own promotions to give their guys more fights. So I try to pay attention to those. A lot of those fights you can find on YouTube. What is my opinion on Jingnan as a fighter? She has a tough time finishing fighters like Tiffany Teo, whose striking is not good, and Michelle Nicolini, who is gassed after the first round. I think honestly, Xiong Jingnan she really needs fighters who can push her hard. She just has not had, like, the highest level of opponents. She's fought a couple really good straight jiu-jitsu fighters. She's fought Angela Lee a couple times, which has brought out the best of her. But honestly, yeah, you're right. Has a hard time finishing fights. I think that she just needs fights that really pump some blood through her body. I think that she needs fights against opponents that have a high probability of beating her. That's one champion. I have no idea what One Championship is doing with their women's divisions. It kind of feels like they've just let them slip through their fingers. They have not signed high-level competition, high-level fighters to those divisions. They've really just rested on Xiong Jingnan and Angela Lee to carry those divisions, and basically just making those two fighters fight each other 3 times. And that most likely is done. doubtful we'll get to see Angela Lee and Xiong Jingnan fight again, although I don't know anything about if Angela Lee's going to come back or not. But really, that's like the only fight that is interesting in all of One Championship's women's divisions. Maybe they can get Meng Bo against Xiong Jingnan. That seems like the most logical fight. I don't know why they haven't made that fight, and instead they're giving Xiong Jingnan this like striking special rules fight. It's an interesting challenge for her. But even on like Drake Riggs' interview with her the other day, like Drake was like, what exactly are the rules for this fight? Like they haven't even communicated what the rules are for this fight. And I think Xiong Jingnan said something along the lines of like, it's like boxing, but maybe with knees. So maybe just punches and knees. I don't know. It's really strange. I'm very confused by the purpose of this fight and the rules. Like those rules have not been communicated to us. So yeah, it's just kind of odd. I don't know why they haven't made the Meng Bo fight. Is it a China versus China? Like we don't want to fight. I don't know. Don't want to speculate there. That may not be in play at all, but I just feel like she needs harder challenges, honestly, man. Been using Billy as a resource for Zhang Wei Li interviews and content. Why do you think she doesn't do the MMA Hour or bigger platforms more often? I thought that she had done an MMA Hour recently. It could just be a language thing where it's just easier to speak to a Chinese audience. Maybe she just prefers to connect to her Chinese fans more. But I think, honestly, Zhang is not on a whole lot of interviews just because she keeps her head down and trains. I think that's what it is. I don't know if you saw, but I asked James Lynch on his Q&A if he knew you, and he did. I tried to give your show, dude. Thank you so much, James. Really appreciate that, bro. Yeah, that's cool that James remembers me. I think maybe I've like DM'd him like once or twice, just short. We have not interacted a whole lot, but literally, like, if you have any questions about MMA media and professionalism, James Lynch is the guy to go to. Like, he literally is elevating all of MMA media single-handedly. Most MMA media members don't take, like professional ones, don't take the time to make videos and kind of like talking. Like he released a video earlier this week that I think was really popular and I really appreciated, about fake fight announcements within the MMA media and sort of like knowing who to trust. And I'm like, man, videos like these literally bring up the level of quality among MMA media. If everyone in the MMA media could watch these, the quality would be so much better. And the fact that James takes the time out of his very professional career to address things like that, I think is really important that someone's doing that. I would like to do more of that kind of stuff, but I also just like have to realize where I'm at with everything. One thing that James mentioned, kind of the main takeaway that I got from that video, was that we need a lot more honesty among MMA media. Just like, and what I mean by that is we need honesty of, like, if we're communicating about a fight, we need to honestly communicate at what stage that fight is at. We need to, if a fight is debunked, we need to take it off our social media. As media members, we need to be honest about where we're at in our career. And at one point he talked about like media members that think that they're hot shots just because they work part-time and make $10 an article for a mid to lower level site, or because they get to go as media to an event. I think that's really good and probably stirs up some imposter syndrome in a lot of people, but we do just need to be more honest about where we're at. And honestly, I was thinking about even making a video just kind of honestly talking about where I am at on my MMA media journey. Because yeah, sure, I've got my own podcast, I've got an Instagram page, I've got a YouTube page, but like, I've only been in this for a little over 2 years. I've worked for some of those kind of sites that he talked about, like MMA Sucka, the All-Star. And part of the reason why I worked for those sites is because James Lynch told me to on some of his other videos. I was following his advice of like kind of how to get started in the MMA media world. So I look to guys like James to be professional, and you know, like look at him, look at Luke Thomas, Ariel Helwani, Nolan King, Marcel Dwarf. Those are the guys I'm shooting for, and I've made some small missteps in my career, and I want to be honest about those. If I get something wrong, which I don't think I've made some like small errors, but I haven't made like, I haven't announced a fight as done when it wasn't even like happening. I haven't done anything like that yet. Some of my bigger, I would say probably my biggest misstep was announcing UFC Seoul. And I think if I remember, I was honest about that. Like, this isn't 100% done, but some people may have interpreted some of my news as this is done. Of course, that fell through because the Korean Zombie wasn't able to make the event. So, I don't have a lot of regrets with that, but that was like one thing that I, like, in hindsight, I probably would have waited a little bit longer. But yeah, really appreciate James, all the work that he does. I watch his interviews, try to learn from them as well. But yeah. Okay, Japanese MMA question. Are you a fan of Kazushi Sakuraba? Dude, who isn't? Who isn't a fan of Sakuraba? Literally nothing to dislike about that guy. Okay, so Jimmy, yeah, when she asked Weili that, he knew that the Valentina fan base would get angry when she even breathes in her direction. Yeah, very loyal fan base. Oh, I got an answer for you, Kendris. Who do you think Peter Daniso will fight next? His flying knee was an incredible KO. Is he someone that excites you as a young fighter? Absolutely. And earlier this week on my social media accounts, I announced that Peter Daniso will be fighting Naim Jargal to Minden Barrel at Road to UFC semifinals, August 26th in Singapore. I feel like probably if he wins the fight, he'll get into the UFC. But yeah, really sick flying knee KO, just 22 years old, training at Bong Tao MMA. The future is really bright for Peter. So I think he'll probably be your first Thai fighter in the UFC for sure. Looking forward to that. Naim Jargal is no scrub either. So should be a tough fight. What is your opinion on having media scrums during UFC pay-per-views with John Anik or DC, where the media asks them questions like they are fighters? Do you find that practice weird? Sort of. I can see where you're coming from there. It's like, they're not a fighter. They're not Dana White. They're not really like, they're not someone at an executive level making decisions. But I mean, I'll be honest, they're just like, they're really popular, well-known figureheads. They spend their whole lives in the guts of the UFC machine, and they interact with a lot of fighters. They know almost more about the sport than anybody at like a broad level. So I do think that like I think that they make really good interviews. They're really good at talking. So I think that's another reason why they get to do those scrums is because they're good on the mic. Not every fighter or not every exec is always a really compelling interview, but those guys are always, kind of on their A game. So I don't mind it. I always love hearing from them, especially John Anik, one of the best guys in the sport. So, back on the James Lynch Q&A, which I'm definitely going to have to look up. Thank you. Said you have done good work. I'll also bring up a question that I have asked him. Why is it so hard to respect people in chat rooms? I don't agree with some stuff that you, Drake Riggs, Dan Tom, Jack Slack, James Lynch said, but I respect them because they show their work. Why is it so hard to respect people? I mean, this kind of goes back to like MMA fans in general. And I appreciate you saying that. I definitely don't expect everyone to agree with my opinions. That would be kind of weird if you did agree with every single opinion of mine. I haven't like found a media member that I agree with every single one of their opinions either. But I feel like if we're respectful about the way that we communicate our opinions and also receive criticism and dissenting opinions, then that's when dialogue can happen. But I think if like when people just basically go on these angry rants, go on tirades, it's hard to even have a conversation. And I'm not really interested in conversing with people that just want to go on angry rants. So Yeah, I think for me, I want to carry myself in a respectful way, and I think it's okay for people to feel strongly about something and to, like you said, show their work. But I think it's hard just because people have strong opinions, and when we're hiding behind a computer screen, when we're not face to face, then it's so much easier to tear people down, right? This is the Twitter problem. This is the YouTube comment section problem. So one reason why I am sometimes critical of social media as a whole is because it disintegrates us and it breaks apart natural relationships, natural systems of dialogue, and it reduces people to a screen name and text on a screen rather than as whole people. That's a whole nother topic, but yeah, I think that's why it is so hard to be disrespectful on the internet, for sure. Miss that. Looking forward to next Road to UFC, and feel like respecting people can make the sport better. Yeah, I agree. Trying to push that forward, and I appreciate you also feeling that way as well. But guys, thank you so much. This has been a great podcast. Really enjoyed it, and looking forward to more in the future. Be looking for my Asu Almabaev breakdown video in the next few hours, dropping on this exact same channel. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe. I'll be back next week to break down more Asian MMA. Later this month, we've got Road to UFC. We've got UFC Singapore. We've got Zhongwei Li fighting in the co-main of UFC 292. Lots to talk about, lots to be excited for, and I will be here for the whole ride. So for me, from Portland, Oregon, hope you have a great day.